Today, this half hour on the program, our Assistant City Manager in the city of Battle Creek, Ted Deering, focused on downtown development. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Very well. Thanks for braving the rain there.
No problem.
Coming on
no
back.
problem at all.
It's been a while since we've chatted, a few months maybe, and when we talked before, there was a lot brewing. It seems like that still is, right?
Yeah, that's a very good way to look. It's kind of the old analogy about water boils at 212 degrees.
That's right. Yeah.
We're probably like at about 208 degrees right now. We don't want to take the the pan off the stove because we're just this close on a number of projects, including a couple of projects that have emerged since the last time you and I talked. The Battle Rock development at the old 50 West Michigan, and a couple of other things that have developed or are developing that provide a lot of promise for the downtown. We just kind of got to get over the hump.
Well, 208 is pretty close to 212.
Yes, it is. It's as close as we've been in a long time.
That's
I think.
right.
Yeah.
This is interesting. You talked about Battle Rock, and I was going to bring that up. This is that kind of business is has a certain clientele, right? And that's kind of what we want, right? Those folks.
I think so. I think so because if we are going to be successful in the downtown, we've got to attract a certain type of demographic, and they're looking for certain kinds of amenities, and this is the kind of amenity that they're looking for. So, I mean, you can envision in your mind somebody who chooses to call downtown home, for example, is going to be looking for these kinds of amenities. They're going to be a younger a crowd, and they're going to want to know what they can do after work, and that's going to be a great addition to the landscape.
Well, and that's an interesting point. That if this is the demographic you want, then you have to kind of get in their head and think about what it is they might like to do. So this is an urban professional, right? Yep. What else would we say about this demographic? They're obviously working when they like living in an urban area.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously we're seeing the trends that suggest that, and it's not even just the millennials as we call them per se, but baby boomers as well who are choosing denser urban experiences. But they expect that not only is there a place to live, but the other attractions, the retail, the commercial, the entertainment options, the dining, the places to stop by and have a drink after work are all there. And this is always kind of a chicken and egg thing here.
Right.
But we've kind of made our decision on that and said we really have to drive the residential first, and then some of those amenities will follow. But you can't get too far behind the curve on that either. They've got to happen kind of parallel to each other, or you can't gain any momentum. And Battle Rock is a good example. We don't really have that critical mass yet. That's a regional attraction. That'll be great because that'll draw people in. But that's got to develop along with residential.
Right, and so you're juggling both of those. It's sort of like, I don't know, pushing two shopping carts side by side at the same time, and you've got to kind of keep them even.
That's exactly right. That's a great analogy.
Yeah. So this is and advancing in that area. We'll talk about the residential part coming up in just a minute on WBCK. We're here with the Assistant City Manager in Battle Creek, Ted Deering, talking about downtown development. So, that has an interesting feel. The Battle Rock idea, it sounds silly to say it this way, but for somebody who wants to go climb a wall after work, I mean, this is an opportunity, but this is part of that lifestyle.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And the other very encouraging thing about this particular development is you've got local developers who are committed to this community who are saying, we'd like to see those kinds of amenities in Battle Creek. We don't want to travel 45 minutes to do this. We want to be able to do it right here in our hometown, and they're willing to to back that up with an investment, and that's very encouraging. And we're starting to see that with other local developers as well, and that's what's really going to turn the tide for us.
So when they say to you that they're interested in that, are they asking you at the same time, how about that residential thing? And are they wanting to know what your timing is, about the 208 degrees there?
Yeah, yeah, they are. I mean, obviously, everybody's concerned about long-term sustainability. And obviously, the retail businesses that are downtown, the bookstore and the toy store and others, they need that critical mass to survive. So they're very interested in how that's developing. Most people look at the Heritage Tower project, and we would have gotten to that eventually, obviously, and they they recognize it's fairly catalytic in the downtown, and that's another one of those projects that's kind of at 208 degrees, and just trying to get over the hump. You've got a couple of potential participants in the capital stack just kind of looking at each other and saying, who's going to go first now, and that's where we are on some of these projects. So, yeah, you're right. Those folks that would develop, the amenities that would support downtown living recognize that we need to be successful with the residential piece for them to be successful.
When you were here last, we talked about the Heritage Tower, and you said something along the lines of, we're closer than we've ever been to something happening there, although if we're going to get stuck on something, this is where we'd get stuck. How do you feel about it today?
Yeah, I think we feel encouraged, no doubt about it. The Enquirer ran an article maybe a couple of weeks ago now that I thought was a fairly, pretty good overview of where we are with the project. Again, the issue there is, if that capital stack has 9 layers to it, 6 of them are secured, 3 of them are they're working on, and those 3 are looking at each other again and saying, okay, who's going to be first in? And we're trying to resolve those issues right now. But I think we're still really optimistic about this project. It's a difficult project. As the finances have been shared and people are starting to get an understanding of how expensive it is to rehab that building, and then what you can capture in terms of rents once the building is complete, you understand where the value gap is and how challenging it is to fill. So I still think, they laid out a potential schedule for construction in the spring, and I still think that's a real possibility.
And nobody went into this thinking it was going to be easy, right?
I think that they may have gone into it thinking it was going to be a little easier than it was.
Okay.
Because they ran into some legacy issues at the building that they just that none of us anticipated because we didn't necessarily knew that they exist. But these guys have done projects in Grand Rapids. They know that these buildings can be challenging.
Right.
This one's probably taken a little bit longer than they anticipated, and the value gap might be a little bit bigger than they anticipated. But the good news is they're hanging right in there. They understand how important it is to our community. And part of the financing piece right now involves the state of Michigan and potential resources that are available through the MEDC and the State Strategic Fund.
Sure.
And they recognize how important this project is too. And they're committing, they're talking about committing at a fairly high level. So that's encouraging.
What are some examples of some of the challenges that might have been more so than they expect?
Well, the big one, and it's an ongoing challenge, is that there was an easement in place in the building that provided access to a cell company to the roof. And when there were some environmental issues identified in the building, they were required to install this kind of safe passageway from the main floor all the way to the roof and maintain it.
They want to get up there to their towers.
Yeah, but they've got to test it, once a month and constantly maintain it. And so a significant amount of expense and delay and time went into that particular project. There were some outstanding utility bills that became an issue from a previous ownership. There was a labor issue that kind of came with the building, as they say, that had to be resolved. And so, they've spent more money than people think, but not necessarily on the things we'd want to spend money on rehabbing the building. So those have certainly delayed the project over time. They're over most of those hurdles now, and so now it's a matter of finalizing the finance for the project.
All right. And so that is another cell that has to take place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when you're talking about financing for something like this, are those potential funders, do they need to come and see it? How far do you go with this?
There was a point where members of the primary lender, the bank that was involved, were in hazmat suits walking through the building. So they they want to know what they're investing in, and that would tell you what some of the challenges are with that particular property. So yes, you've got a primary lender, you've got maybe a couple secondary lenders that are in second position. You've got state incentives mixed in there. You've got a certain equity position in the project, and there might be two or three other sources of funding. We're providing some money through an APA revolving loan fund that we have, and so there's several layers to this, and everybody wants to know what they're investing in and want to be assured that it will be successful. So it's a challenge, but we're making progress.
Well, if you're an entity interested in a project like this, we presume that this is more cost effective than trying to build a building that's similar.
Yeah, absolutely. To some degree. Obviously we see a lot of this type of development where somebody goes and just finds a green field where they don't have to deal with some of these issues. You know, but if you want to be part of a dense urban environment, a downtown, these are the buildings that you have to work with. Either that or you have to do infill development. You're not going to infill, a multi, a 27-story building.
Right.
And so these are rare opportunities, but they're expensive. They're expensive to rehab. But again, people are starting to make choices that support developing these types of buildings. In Grand, you see it in Grand Rapids a little bit. They're starting to, the development is starting to catch up with, with the funding gaps. Now I can get this in rent, and my funding gap is quite a bit smaller. So these projects are viable on their own. That really hasn't made its way all the way to Battle Creek yet. So funders are still relatively reluctant to take on these kinds of projects. So it takes a pretty high level of convincing to get them there.
Well, and I guess it's like anything else that isn't proven. It's easier to point to a track record than it is to not, and I suppose that might be part of where we are. Ted Daring is here from the city of Battle Creek. We're talking about downtown development. We'll pick up where we leave off. A few more minutes with Ted Daring from the city of Battle Creek. There's been other things happening that have fostered headlines, the panhandling ordinance and this anti-adult business discussion that's going on. These are all, I suppose, right, components of a downtown that's surging back. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. I hate to I hate to isolate either the panhandling ordinance or the the Dickman Road bids request to restrict adult business to strictly a downtown issue. I think that those are certainly community issues, but those are the kinds of things that obviously we have to pay attention to if we're going to have a significant level of residential or even activity in general in the downtown. And we want to be very sensitive and conscious of what it means to be homeless in our community.
Right.
And what types of services that are out there that can support, a transition from homelessness, to a more stable, economic, environment for those that are economically disadvantaged or at risk in our community. But we also need some tools to make sure that we manage that in a way that makes Battle Creek an attractive place to live.
Well, and these things come up, like this adult business thing, that these things make headlines, but most cities deal with it. Kalamazoo dealt with it. They kicked Deja Vu out of the area to some extent. You have these discussions about if you're going to attract a certain demographic, that some things might turn that demographic off.
Well, yeah, and this just is kind of basic zoning 101. As a community, we have the right to plan and decide, how we want to configure ourselves. We don't put, Walmarts in the middle of residential neighborhoods. We prevent that by having zoning regulations that suggest a particular use is appropriate for a particular area. With the Dickman Road bid district, we tried to build a brand around automobiles there in an effort to, again, attract a regional audience to that corridor. And so strategically, we're just thinking about, okay, what would that mix look like? We're not trying to prevent all adult businesses from being in Battle Creek. They're allowed by right in certain zoning districts, but it does make sense for us as a community to say, okay, we don't want them close to a school, for example, and we may not want them right in the middle of the Miracle Motor Mile, just as you don't see them on Michigan Avenue in Chicago.
Right.
That's just community planning. That's zoning, and that's what we do when we're thinking strategically about what we want our community to look like and what we want our community to feel like.
All right. So you go back to the office today, and what are you looking at next in all of these hurdles that you're most concerned with?
Yeah, again, a lot of these projects are right at the critical financing stage. So we're staying close to the developers and staying close to the lenders, and talking with the state about incentives to make sure all of these get over the hump. The other thing that we're real excited about, we haven't talked a lot about it here, is this education initiative that we've been working on that took the mayor and I to China a couple of months ago is starting to come to fruition. They're ready to invest in some property and do some building. More on that in a couple of weeks. We'll have some more firm details. But something that's been theoretical for quite a while is starting to become a reality, and we're real excited about it.
Yeah, the mayor came and talked about that after you returned, that this is a group of students, we presume a revolving group that would continue to come to study here, and this is big in that it would be an ongoing thing, and as well would bring these folks to town. They would be living here and studying here, and this is a contingent we've not seen before.
Yep, and that is an absolutely accurate description of what's going on. And, because of some of our education assets that we have here with Western and KCC, and Western's really extraordinary CELSIS program, which supports students who study abroad, we have an opportunity to make something really special happen in our community. And, again, we've been working on it for a long time. Their last visit here, which was just last week, we started to talk seriously about implementation. So we're real encouraged about where we are with this project.
Is it fair to say then that they'd be looking at housing properties in the city of Battle Creek?
They certainly would be up and developing some space for their students, as well as perhaps rehabbing some existing buildings in our community, which is good. We need that. And they're on a timeline now that would bring the first class, in theory, by January of 2018. Sounds like it might be a long way away, but it's not a long way away at all.
About a year,
and so, this could be this could be a great project for our community and help us build, again, some of that critical mass that's needed to make the business and retail community in our city more successful.
Well, we'll stay in touch on that and everything else, I suppose.
Sounds good.
Thanks for the update, Ted.
Thank you.
Ted Deering, City of Battle Creek on WBCK.